During the winter of 2009, my parents decided to get photos taken of my siblings and I so that we could put them in family Christmas cards and send them to all of our friends and family. A few days before Christmas, we all got dressed up and went over to the photo studio. Since it was late in the evening, the photo studio was packed with people waiting to get last-minute photos taken before Christmas. Before long, the line became so long that we were forced to wait outside. We were all okay with this, except for my younger sister, Mira. As soon as we got outside, Mira began to scream, shout, and pull on my mother's hair. We all tried to console her, but no one had any idea exactly why she was upset. She ended up having a huge meltdown, and we never ended up getting her photos taken that year. Looking back, it's apparent that Mira became upset because she thought that going outside meant that we weren't going to have her pictures taken. In her mind, she had created a routine around the idea of us getting her pictures taken, but when the situation changed, she wasn't able to cope. She wasn't able to explain any of this to us at the time, so no one had any idea exactly why she was upset. My little sister Mira is currently in 8th grade and has autism. How many people in the audience know someone with autism? Autism refers to a wide range of disorders, many of which are characterized by personal problems in social communication and repetitive patterns of behavior. Generally, people with autism exist on a spectrum from low to high functioning behaviors. There's currently not one single known cause of autism today, although recent evidence points to a genetic component for it. There are many different ways to treat autism. One of the most prominent methods of treating autism, and one that my sister went through, is called Applied Behavioral Analysis, or ABA therapy for short. And ABA therapy is the science that applies the principles of learning and behavioral control in order to improve important behaviors. One way to illustrate this is through what is called discrete trial teaching. And discrete trial teaching is where you break a large task down into smaller components in order to teach each component separately. So first, a cue is given, second, the child responds, and third, a reward is given based on an appropriate response. And the next stage is called teaching for generalization. This is where a skill is initially learned in a common environment in order to better allow that skill to develop, and then reapplied across various settings. And various forms of reinforcement are present throughout this entire process. Many critics of ABA therapy say that it doesn't take the feelings or the emotions or wants or needs of an autistic child into account, and that it only seeks to make them seem more normal in real life. To understand this perception of ABA, we need to look a little at its history. In 1968, 5 researchers at the University of Kansas founded the Journal for Applied Behavioral Analysis in order to publish their new research in applied behavior in autistic children. And around this time, another student from the university named Ivar Lovaas created a system for identifying different observed behaviors within autistic children and using reinforcers to teach kids to imitate similar behaviors. This system became the pioneer for what ABA therapy currently is today. Lovaas has become somewhat controversial recently due to his endorsement of electroshock therapy as an intervention method within autistic children and to his perception of what his therapy was intended for. Lovaas once infamously said that autistic people are not people in the psychological sense, and that they need to be built from the ground up. But despite this view, in 1973, a follow-up study showed that people who had undergone intensive therapy had seen rapid increases in behavioral control. Since then, ABA therapy has changed enormously. While Lovaas initially pioneered the use of ABA therapy, he was more focused on simply replicating neurotypical behavior within young children and punishing stimming behaviors. Stimming behaviors are behaviors that autistic people exhibit generally in response to stress, suspense, or excitement situations in their life. But still, in the 1970s, people who underwent ABA therapy underwent what is a general formulaic program that was primarily designed to punish stimming behaviors and to make children seem more neurotypical. Michael Powers, a director for the Center of Children with Special Needs in Connecticut, describes the overly intense process that he would go through in order to instill a simple behavior in a child. One example of this was eye contact. According to Powers, 5 seconds, as if that was the pivotal time. The last time I looked someone in the eye for 5 consecutive seconds, I proposed. So coming back to the criticisms I previously mentioned, many people today still see ABA therapy as an old-fashioned method of treatment that doesn't focus on the wants or emotions or needs of an autistic child and only seeks to make them seem more normal. And this perception is not completely wrong, but however, it is rooted in an older form of ABA, like Labas's, that was more focused on simply replicating neurotypical behavior and punishing stimming behaviors with brute force intervention. Today, ABA therapy is different. It focuses on encouraging engagement through positive behavior rewardment. So in this sense, stimming is not necessarily seen as a bad thing or something that needs to be outright eliminated. It's seen instead as something that needs to be regulated or replaced with placeholder behaviors, and it's used as a map to find what behaviors can initiate stress in an autistic child. And negative behavior punishments are generally not used in order to encourage the individual's own motivation in their actions. And lastly, all ABA certified institutions have a BCBA, or Board Certified Behavioral Analyst. And a Board Certified Behavioral Analyst goes through years of training and has to pass multiple board exams in order to get the status. And remember, no two ABA programs are exactly the same. Each one is different and tailored exactly to fit the needs of each autistic individual. So I bring ABA therapy up because my sister Mira is a successful example of implementing ABA behavior in an autistic child. From ages 4 to 10, she attended the Homestead, ABA clinic in Clive, Iowa. Here, researchers and therapists analyzed Mira's behavioral patterns and figured out ways that we could improve her behavioral control. One problem that we sought to address was Mira's routine making. And Mira used to create routines in her everyday life in order to deal with the suspense and anxiety that she and many other autistic children experience daily. The photo studio story example I talked about in the beginning is a great example about how Mira used routines to deal with the uncertainty and stress in her everyday life. In some ways, this was a positive, as creating routines allowed Mira to be able to develop great habits very effectively. But in other ways, this was a negative, as if anything from her routine changed, Mira would immediately have a meltdown and become unable to function. One solution that therapists at the Homestead told us to try was to create artificial routines in Mira's everyday life and then create disruptions in these routines in order to provoke an intended response from Mira. And then one example of this was when we used to pick Mira up home from school. When Mira was in elementary school, we used to pick her up home from school and let her choose the radio station that we listened to. However, one day, as per the Homestead's request, we allowed me to choose the radio station, the music that we listened to. And as expected, Mira threw a huge tantrum and she wasn't able to function because the events in the routine she had created in her head every day had become disrupted. However, when we repeated this multiple times, we could see that Mira's bad behavior slowly subsided and she became able to function again after we changed the events in her routine. And the message here to Mira was that there are certain behaviors that are okay and not okay, and basically that if your routine changes, it's not the end of the world. Another behavior that the Homestead tried to address was Mira's scripting. So when Mira was little, she would often recite words that she saw in music, TV, and movies that she heard at random events or times in her life, and she would recite these words at inopportune times and every day. And this was a complete negative because she would often say random stuff that she heard in music and TV when we were in the middle of conversations or when she was supposed to be silent. And this behavior is not uncommon among autistic children. It's usually referred to as a form of stimming, which, like I previously mentioned, is a behavior that autistic people exhibit generally in response to stress or uncertainty in their everyday life. So the Homestead saw this was stimming, and instead of trying to completely get rid of this behavior in Mira, they sought to address it and create placeholder behaviors to replace this. So for example, sometimes if Mira wanted to stim, therapists would give her a notebook to write down what she wanted to say onto, so that she could fulfill her stimming but that it wouldn't disrupt us and other people around her. So the key message here was that stimming is not a complete negative and that it should be addressed as something that autistic people use to respond to stressful situations. And placeholder behaviors are an integral element of the ABA system. One major thing that I've learned from this entire experience is just how much time, how much effort that it goes into in order to implement ABA therapy. When I was younger and I would come home from school, I would often see my sister talking or doing normal mundane activities with therapists, and it would seem like they were just doing what I did at school with my friends. But however, when I look back, it's apparent the time and effort and purpose that these activities had in Mira's everyday life. and how they were helping her shape her to be a better person through her behavior. And overall, at the end of this therapy, Mira has gained control to the point where we can now say that she is high functioning on the spectrum. So overall, I've learned from this experience more about the ABA system and the extent to which it's helped my sister Mira behave more effectively in everyday life. Thank you.